She goes. Okay, I'll take the reins from here. So hi everyone, welcome to day 2 of the Women's Motorcycle Conference online. My name is Jen Dunstan. I'll be your panel lead and moderator for this session. And this session is actually called Transformative Riding, Unlocking Your Potential on Bikes and in Life. Quick elevator pitch about my background. I've been riding on 2 wheels for about 20 years now. I've also been a motorcycle industry insider for the past decade. My resume includes positions held with Dainese, Troy Lee Designs, Thor Motocross, Alta Motors, Sena Bluetooth, and now I'm with Husqvarna Motorcycles USA as their district sales manager of the Southwest region. Big thank you to everyone for joining us today. It's absolutely a pleasure to share our stories and our journeys with you. Also, a special thank you to Alyssa Clickinger, Brittany Murrow, and all the organizers behind the scene of this Women's Motorcycle Conference. You know, it's no easy thing to coordinate all this, and especially in the short time frame that they did. So a huge shout out and thank you to them for all their efforts. So we'll dive into the abstract a little bit here, and the overarching theme of this Women's Motorcycle Conference online is reinvention. And there's been nothing more pivotal and self-improving and reinventing for me than riding motorcycles, but more specifically is trying different disciplines and different bikes and different terrains has really redefined my life and led to this kind of term of transformative riding. But I'm sure my journey starts like most of yours did, and that's just that little will, that impulse to learn how to ride a motorcycle to begin with. And as we all know, that process of learning how to ride a motorcycle for the first time it's full of joys and thrills, but also some really close calls and some spills is how I like to call it. And we kind of crest that learning curve, and you become one with your bike. You really enjoy riding. You know all the local roads like the back of your hand. You have a crew of riders that you can regularly call on, and you find that kind of, you know, that world of Zen, and motorcycling is one with you. And it's a great feeling. It's a really great place to be. And I was there for several years as a street rider. And I thought I kind of knew all there was to know about riding. I thought I had found that plateau and everything was fine. It wasn't until I had some friends and colleagues show me road racing and track riding, and they're really encouraging me to try it. And I figured, what the heck? Like, I'm a street rider of like 7 or 8 years now. Like, how hard can this road racing thing be? And it turns out it's like really wicked hard. You know, I showed up at the track in my first race. I was dead last, and I was lapped by several people, and it was super humbling. And I had to, you know, really, you know, self-reflect and be like, oh my God, like there's so much more to riding that I don't know about. And I want to learn, and I need to learn. So I kind of restarted that cycle all over again of learning how to ride and kind of being a student of speed on the track and on a motorcycle. So the joys, the thrills, the close calls and spills all just recirculated again. And through it all, you know, I made friends in the paddock for life. I met my future husband. I found a whole new career. I left industrial design and started to become a designer in the motorcycle industry. So the point is when you push that boundary and when you find a new hurdle to get over in your riding, it often will be in lockstep with huge improvements you make in your life and your professional life. And, you know, I thought maybe road racing was like the close of that chapter, and I'd gotten really good at it. I'd gotten really fast at it. I've been riding a ton of bikes, doing motorcycle shootouts for different magazines. I thought I was like at the top of my game. And then I started working for Troy Lee Designs, which is a legendary motocross brand, like so awesome, so cool in the dirt. And I was like, man, you know what? Like, if I'm gonna work for this brand, like I really should know how to ride a dirt bike. And once again, I was like, how hard could a dirt bike be? I mean, like I ride, you know, 1,000 cc motorcycles on the track, like with the men and racing and bumping elbows, dragging knee. I'm like, I got this. So I go to my first day at a motocross track, hop on a TTR 125. I'm not kidding you. I'm crashing in like every corner, just knifing the front. 8-year-olds are roosting me in the face. Like, you know, it was again like a really humbling experience. And once again, that pivotal moment, like, oh my God, like I don't know how to ride a dirt bike. I'm actually really awful at it. And so the cycle started all over again. And so the point of my rambling introduction here is that when you allow yourself to cross disciplines and try new bikes and try new terrains, you expose yourself to unlimitless potential of you as a rider, as a professional, and more importantly, as a person. So without further ado, I really want to hop in here and introduce all my panelists and let them share, a quick 5 to 7 minute intro as well about what their process was and try new bikes and what it's meant for them as well. So just really quick, brief introductions of each. We have Dr. Margie D, who is a professor at Virginia Tech University and in a really interesting field right now, which is, I believe, microbiology and infectious disease. I'm sure she could tell you more about that. But also on top of that, Margie's been riding for the past 34 years in a plethora of different disciplines. So we're so happy to have her here. We also have on the line AJ Jacobson, who is a longtime street rider with a lot of mileage under her belt, who also made the transition to road racing. She's done some races with the AFM, and I think more recently she's gridding up in Texas with the local series there, which she'll tell us all about. And finally, we have MK. I'm gonna go ahead and butcher her name right now, probably. I think it's Marika Pamart, and she'll correct me if I got that wrong. But MK runs a really cool motorcycle training program called Ruts to Raceline. And it's so cool in that it's both pavement and dirt that she crosses disciplines with, which is really rare for a training, motorcycle training organization. And of course, on top of that, MK has just years and years of experience on both. So huge thank you to my panelists for joining me. What I think I'm gonna do is I'm gonna invite Margie to please take the horn here and tell our attendees all about your transformative riding experience.
Thank you. And can you guys hear me okay? You'll nod if you can. All right, great. So, normally I don't put the degrees and that crap in my personal life because it's irrelevant. I try to keep my work life and my personal life separate. So my hoodlum motorcycle friends and my geeky scientist friends. And a lot of times that overlaps. My former department head was also one of my geeky motorcycle buddies, and we used to go to the track together. I think motorcycles were the things that taught me most about myself. What I discovered was that I am one of those people that likes to try new things. I like to test myself, and I like to find out how good I can be. And I did that same thing training as a scientist. I grew up on a dirt road in the South, right when they integrated schools. Nobody had ever met a scientist in my neighborhood. They were like astronauts and leprechauns, I'm sure they were out there somewhere, but nobody had actually seen one. And I experimented enough with college to end up with these degrees. I had 2 dual-purpose bikes as my first bikes. In between, I had 2 cruisers. I wasted about 20 years on cruisers because I found out that they didn't do much. People just didn't get together and have fun. I bought my first sport bike when I was 46 years old, and that was the beginning. I went to the Women's Motorcycle Rally, met a bunch of crazy women. I always felt like I was the outlier, and it was like a family reunion for crazy women like me. It was a little Ducati Monster. I will hold up this picture. This is me on my first track day. You can't see the terror in my face, but I was hooked. And so since then, I've owned a lot of different bikes. I've done a lot of different motorcycle sports. I road raced. I've done enduro, not racing. I have a touring bike, which is behind me. I actually took a Ducati Hyper Motard with a girlfriend cross country in 2015. We were gone for 3 weeks, camping and sofa surfing and just having the best time. And then lately, a friend has gotten me into trials, and you can see the trials bike there. Those things are fun too. And so what Jen said really resonated. Every time I tried something new, it was really humbling because I thought that, one motorcycle sport was like another, and it really wasn't. So I'm going to end up there.
Oh, got to find the unmute button. Awesome. Thank you, Margie, for that background. Let's just dive right into it with AJ. AJ, give us your background.
So I kind of started out very similar to Jen in a way. I started out on the street. I was 25 years old. My now ex came home one day and was like, hey, I've been saving up money. I'm going to go buy a motorcycle. And I'm like, dude, I've always wanted to ride. If you are, I am. So we went through the MSF class together. I'd never been on a motorcycle any variety. We went through the class. Probably should have been a sign. I was dragging pegs in the circle exercises. They were like, you really don't need to go that fast. I was like, it's fun and again, so why not? So rode street for years, moved to California where I rode for about 7 years before I won a free track day through the club I was riding with, Curve Unit. And it went to the track, had a blast, thought that was awesome. So the next year I started going out a lot more, got my race license that year, and then didn't do too much on the track the next couple years, but 2015, I decided to go all in and did my first full race season with the AFM. I was on a 2007 Triumph Daytona at that time for my race bike, variety of street bikes over the years, mostly sport bikes. And then end of 2016, I was feeling pretty quick. I was feeling like I was doing pretty darn good for the bike I was on. So I decided to go buy my dream race bike, and I bought my ZX-10R. The next day, decided to go try a dirt bike class, go figure, and severely broke my leg in the class, which basically set me back about 2 years on the road racing, in addition to trying to learn the big bike, which I didn't realize would be such a huge transition, but it was, learning to go fast on the big bike versus the smaller bike. And in the meantime, however, I've continued to ride street. There was a number of years where motorcycle was my only transportation. So year round in California, summer, winter, fall, didn't matter. Rain, some snow, a few hailstorms. And then last year I was racing with the CMRA down in Texas. I actually just moved to the Atlanta area a few weeks ago. So this year, if we ever get back out there, it'll be WERA. And hopefully Moto America if I ever get my points, if we can ever get back on the track. So that's where I'm at right now. I was planning a wild carding a couple Superstock 1000 races this year, but with everything on hold, everything's on hold. But so that's my background and where I'm at. I've also coached everything from introductory new rider classes to new racer schools. So lots of coaching, many, many years of training a variety of riders. So it's always been a passion of mine as well.
Awesome. Thanks, AJ. And that's awesome. You're a rider coach as well. Sorry, I forgot to mention that. So everyone, AJ's background there. All right, MK, it's your turn. And please tell me how to pronounce your name. I kind of feel like a ding dong.
Hi, everybody. And you said it right. It's Marika. So anyway, my background is kind of similar to everybody else's here. I started as a street rider. The little bit of difference that I had a girlfriend who pushed me to track riding. I was a street rider. I got my license. I took the MSF in 2007, and I was riding the street, and I heard about these track days, but I was really intimidated. Like, people go fast. It's a racetrack. And I'm not a fast rider. I just started riding, and it was just getting comfortable on the street and just learning the bike on the street. And I was really, really, really intimidated by going to the track. But my friend Natasha, she pushed me. She was a track day girl. She did some club racing, and she pushed me. She's like, Marika, try the track. It's so much safer. And I just couldn't wrap my mind around that. Well, in 2011, I finally went to a track day to shut her up, mostly just to get her off my back. And I'm not gonna lie, I did not have a good time until after lunch. The first couple sessions, it was so overwhelming. There was so much going on. There was so much to learn. Thank God I had Natasha by my side. She was there with me. She told me what to expect. She was checking on me between sessions. And that really made it feel better, a little bit easier for me to be there because I had her by my side. So fast forward to 2013, and I started doing track days more regular. I wasn't doing street riding anymore just because I was so addicted to the track. And that happens, you know, you go from street riding, you try the track, and next thing you know, you're not on the street anymore because the track is where it's at. Like, you can really push limits and get comfortable. And is just, I mean, all motorcycling is a family, but the track day family is just, they take you in and they take care of you, and they're always there for you, whether you have any questions. Anyway, enough about that. And so in 2013, I was riding with Team Promotion, and I approached Glenn, the owner of Team Promotion, with this idea that I had where I saw a need for women to have a place to try the track that wasn't as intimidating. A lot of women that I was riding on the street with, I saw that they wanted to ride the track. They were telling me, but they're like, they were intimidated, they were scared. They were riding with faster people, more aggressive, and they wanted to try it, but just in a less intimidating environment. So I came to Glenn with an idea that's called Track Day Girl, which was a woman's only group. It wasn't a full track day for women. It was just a group in the rotation. And we did that for a couple years. I even started a women's race series. It was called GP Motor Girl. It was all women's race series with Team Promotion, and that went on for a couple years. And then in 2018, Glenn told me that, hey, Team Promotion just can't support Track Day Girl anymore. And at this point, we had really grown it. A lot of women were participating. They were coming to the track days. We had two all-women's events, and we had, 25 women showing up riding at the track day. So when Glenn said, I can't support it anymore, like, I was forced with a decision. I was forced to do it on my own or just kind of let it go away. And the women, I couldn't let them down. So I started Ruts to Race Lines. Now, the ruts part comes with dirt bike riding. And to backtrack a little bit, I was very, very scared of dirt bikes. I was intimidated. Everybody said, get a dirt bike. I'm like, no, like, the ground moves, like the terrain changes. Like, I can't, no, that's scary. Like, I want pavement. Like, I know what to expect around the next turn. I know what's coming up. Like, dirt is so different, and it's scary. No, I'm not getting a dirt bike. All right, so I hit a plateau with the track riding, with the racing, and I got a dirt bike. Aha! My world opened up to me with on the track. Like, the skills that I learned from the dirt bike transitioned into track and the street. So Ruts to Race Lines is a combination of women, introducing women to the dirt and showing them how the dirt riding and the dirt skills can help you in track riding and on the street. There we are.
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks, MK, for all your background as well. So now that we all are comfortable and know each other pretty darn well, actually, at this point, but we ain't done. We have all our curated questions, and we're going to dive deep into a lot more of this stuff. So without further ado, I need a paper for this. Okay, first question, and this will be open to all panelists. Maybe we should continue in the order that we started. So when I pose the question, Margie, you can hop in, AJ, and then MK can follow up. All right, so first question. How long had you been riding before you tried a new bike and or riding style? What caused you to try this other riding style?
So my first two bikes were dual sports. And so I did a lot of dirt roads, back trails, but everyone around me were riding street bikes. And so I got a little Honda Rebel, which was the love of my life for about 10 years, because they'll do everything you want, basically. And they're cheap. I think I sold it for $50 less than I bought it for. Then I bought its big brother, and then I kind of got stuck in the not adventure mode, I think. So with this first sport bike, which was an upright, a monster, what I really wanted next was a little bit more power. So I went from a 695 to a 1100 Street Fighter Ducati, which was awesome. But what I found is that I really wanted to find out if I could ride a full fairing sport bike. So I bought a track bike. And I think for me, the whole thing is challenge and discovery. So I'll change bikes and styles, wondering what's really different and why people really love that. And am I any good at it? And I'll find out real quick, no, I'm not. But then I'll learn what it is that makes that particular type of riding a challenge. And that part I really enjoy. I don't seem to mind making a fool of myself in public. So that's probably why.
I started out, my first bike was a sport bike. I'm still on sport bikes. Had my stint with a dirt bike. I'll get another dirt bike. I've actually started shopping for one, but the biggest transition for me was street to track. And by that point, I'd been on the street about 7 years. And I would say in those 7 years, I developed what took about 2.5 years of track riding to break all the bad habits before I could actually start learning new habits without fighting bad habits I'd developed. So yeah, it was about 7 years before I really switched up what I was doing on a bike.
So I started on a street bike. My first bike was a Honda F3. It was a 600. I think it was like a 98 or something. And then when I got into track riding, I needed a track bike, so I got a 600RR. And I was still riding street and track at that time. But once I started getting more into track, I changed it completely. I put the track fairings on it. It was no longer a street legal bike. And I got introduced to dirt, or I made myself be introduced to dirt. I think it was 2016, so I'm fairly new dirt rider. And that led into the combination of dual sports, which is dirt and street. And I love dual sporting. There is nothing more empowering and freedom to take a dirt bike on the street and hit a trail, and then the scenery and the opportunity and the adventure that going back and forth between street and trail is just, that's where it's at for me. I really love dual sporting.
Awesome. Yeah, and I back you up on that, MK. I'm definitely like a dual sport junkie nowadays. It's awesome to have best of both worlds, honestly. So next question. Were you having a rough time learning a new riding style, and were you tempted to just throw in the towel and give up? What made you stick it through, and what did you gain by really unlocking this new kind of riding?
So probably the first challenge for me was switching from an upright street bike to a full fairing sport bike with clip-ons. And oh my God, was I bad. I had so many bad habits. You know, I was quick, and I was quick on the track with that little monster. I mean, I'm passing bigger bikes. I'm going up the inside of people. I thought I was all that. And then I get this full fairing sport bike. Let's see, I burned up a new clutch at Talladega the first time out. Second time out, I crashed in the bowl. Let's see, probably my first race, I think I crashed in turn 5. It was just, you know, I was just bad. And I realized that I just had a whole different skill set, and I worked on it because I like that kind of challenge. Probably the next opportunity to make a fool of myself was trials. And my friend kept telling me, oh, you have to come do this with me. I'm competing. He had like a trials event at his house. I don't know if he's on, but hey, Del Meso, thanks a lot for getting me into another bad habit. And so the picture I had was me on his bike the first time, and I was awful. Oh my God. I mean, it was like the little overweight kid at the little pseudo trials meet kicked all our butts. And I realized that, you know, skill was a big thing. And it wasn't, you know, it wasn't that it was a difficult sport. It's just really different skill sets. And once I finally took the trials training school, I don't want to do a shout out for another woman rider, Maddie Hoover, MADDIEHOOVER. Maddie is either #1 or #2 women's trial rider in the US and is ranked nationally. I got to see her compete in Italy. And I went to a trial school where Maddie taught it. And I found out some of the reasons why I was so bad. Some of the things that make you really good when you're quick, make you really bad at trials. But it taught me how to turn the bike. And then when I took my race back to the track, and I'm like, oh, that's what I was doing wrong. I know how to turn this thing now. And so humbling, but really invigorating, I think.
For me at first, transitioning into the track, I was enjoying it. I was getting quicker anyways. It's all relative. It felt fast at the time. Now I look back on it and laugh, but it was pretty empowering for a while. 2016, I found some great coaching. I worked with Ken Hill a little bit, who really helped me break down some of my problem areas, and I was making a lot of progress. Probably the biggest struggle I dealt with, and the thing I've had to overcome the most, it was actually after breaking my leg on the dirt bike, plus moving up to the big bike, which the bike turned out to have a bad transmission on top of all that, brand new bike. And those 2017, 18 were really tough because I was actually going several seconds a lap slower on the big bike than I had been on my smaller bike. I couldn't feel my left foot, so trying to shift, especially at race pace, was almost impossible. I was having trouble sitting on the bike and locking my legs in, and the whole time you're spending a rather significant amount of money to go slower than I had been on a 10-year-old or 10 years older, half the horsepower bike. So mentally that was a struggle. I worked with another coach during that time, Tyler O'Hara, to really help keep the 6 inches between my ears focused on the proper things. Not that I was always successful. I won't pretend like it was sunshine and roses, but it really helped to keep that focus going and just to be a little relentless in my pursuit. I knew deep down inside that I had it in me, so I was going to make it happen one way or the other. And then this last year, 2019, things finally started coming back together. I was getting down to my old times. I was starting to feel confident on the bike. And by the end of the year, I was actually feeling like I was getting better than I used to be after 3 years worth of struggling and a plateau. So if I had any advice, I'd be just stick with it, know what you really want, and don't give up on it.
I guess my biggest struggle in the transition was transitioning. There was a struggle with each, going from street to track. There was a struggle there because you have to break street habits to go on the track and have to relearn a whole different style of riding, proper riding. Then there was a struggle going from introducing dirt bikes. Like I said, I was scared of dirt bikes. It was very intimidating. It was very hard for me because I didn't have any proper training. All the coaches were telling me, get a dirt bike, but they didn't tell me what to do with it. They just said, get a dirt bike and it'll help you on the track. And I'm like, okay, so I get a dirt bike and I'm crashing everywhere. I'm just, AJ, I get it. Like I was crashing everywhere. But I pushed through my mental boundaries and I made myself ride it. I got more and more comfortable. And finally, when I got back on the track, it helped. And people ask me, how did it help? Well, sometimes when you're at pace at the track, the bike does things like the rear will wiggle a little bit, or so when you get used to that and you know how to react from riding on a dirt bike, because it wiggles a lot and you just kind of get used to it, you just get through the wiggle and keep riding, and that's how it helped me on the track. Now going from dirt bikes into dual sport, the biggest difference was it's a bigger bike that now I have to pick up when I crash. That was, thank goodness the dual sport and adventure community is great, because when you crash a bike, they help you pick it up off yourself, or they help you get it out of the trees, because that's kind of what happens as well. So that was probably the biggest struggle there, is just the bigger bike in the dirt when you have it off.
Awesome. Yeah, and to pipe in myself as well, the dirt transition was brutal. Aside from knowing the general operations of a motorcycle, like everything else changes, like correct body position, the terrain, like keeping your eye out. It's not like street riding or track riding where the asphalt's very dependable and the race line is always the race line on a track. On a dirt bike, it's just so much more free form. And I'm definitely not done. Like my journey on dirt bikes is still a continuing thing, especially in riding a motocross track. It's super challenging. But I guess I enjoy knowing like my work there is never going to be done for sure. So we have that to look forward to. I'm going to freeform a little bit here too. I want to talk to AJ specifically. You know, you mentioned you broke your leg riding a dirt bike. You know, I'd like to know, like, was that one of your first experiences on dirt bike, or had you ridden dirt bikes for several years? And then also we'll check in with other panelists. Like, have you had an injury while you're on this pursuit of new riding? And then how did you come back from that and continue riding either that same bike or even back to the things that were familiar to you? So AJ, tell us more about that.
So I was in a dirt bike class. It was a bunch of road racers. Unfortunately, I was the only female in the class and the only one in the class who had never been on a dirt bike before. Literally my first time on a dirt bike of any variety. And one of the instructors, I was struggling in the morning because even though I knew you rode them differently, all my muscle memory is all road bike. And then finally one of the instructors said something and I was like, oh my gosh, it's like riding a barrel racing horse. I know how to do that. So I was like, all of a sudden I was doing way better. I picked up a bunch of speed compared to what I'd been doing all morning. And one of the other riders were coming into a tight, slow corner and he decides to try and force a pass on the outside, a bad pass, and crashes into me, hits me. I, of course, starts knocking me over and my foot caught in a rut as we're both going over. So both bikes, people rotated over my leg, which lost. And took me a minute to figure out what, it was like the least spectacular crash ever. We were like 6 miles an hour. It was like so unspectacular compared to some of the road race crashes I've had. But it turned out to be a tib-fib pilion fracture, they call it, where the bottom of your tibia that makes the top of your ankle joint shattered. That doesn't heal real well. There's a few things I'll never do again, like run fast. I can jog, I can do most things, but I've had to adjust the ergonomics on the bike. So my setup is all a little weird and stuff like that. But we've worked through all of that. And so yeah, that was my first time on a dirt bike ever. I made it half a day. I will get another dirt bike. I actually really want one. I want to do like some trails and stuff. But needless to say, for a while, I probably won't let anybody within a 500-foot distance. The social distancing will seem minor compared to me on a dirt bike for a while. So, but yeah, it's it set me back, but it's not going to stop me. So.
Margie, do you want to pipe in on that at all?
The dirt bike part or the crashing part?
Well, just if you in general have ever encountered an injury or a major setback in your different riding adventures and how you overcame it.
You know, I say I have a guardian angel because I've crashed my share, but I've never had a serious injury. So I'm sure my guardian angel drinks because I ride a lot in a lot of different places. I'd say probably, you know, I grew up on horses. So, and then my first 2 bikes were dirt bikes or dual sport. And I was older by then. I didn't get my first bike until I was 26 because I didn't have any money. But it was really similar. And so I really liked the idea of the bike moving around. I like, you know, jumping the logs and doing the whole thing. I had a nice little nylon Yamaha jacket to go with my Yamaha DT100. And then I fell down and it really hurt. And I realized then the gear was important. So I never, ever, ever, ever scrimp on gear anymore. But probably the biggest challenge was a really big crash I had at Jennings where a guy took me out in turn 1. So it was a high-speed crash. I remember none of it because it knocked me out but destroyed my bike. And he spent, I think, 7 days in the hospital, broke 7 ribs, his shoulder, lost a finger. And I woke up feeling fine. People had packed up my bike on my trailer. I drove home. I stopped in for a CAT scan because my friends were really worried, but I was fine and went back to work the next day. And that's kind of been my experience. I probably have had worse injuries mini moto racing because I don't know what it is. People are laughing, you know what I mean, right? So I'm going to get off and you guys can tell those stories.
So at the track, my biggest fear was crashing. I was scared to death to crash, and it really held me back from my riding. It really held me back from pushing. And you know what? I crashed and I survived, and I was able to ride the next session, and it made me a better rider. Believe it or not, crashing and being able to get up and fix my bike made me a better rider. I got that out of the way. Like I crashed, I'm good. And I was able to ride faster, better, and really was able to push. Dirt bikes, you're going to crash. I have bruises. Thankfully, like Margie, I must have a guardian angel because I haven't had any serious injuries. But dirt bikes, they'll humble you. And dual sporting as well. You know, anything that's got to do with dirt and loose terrain and changing terrain. Jen, absolutely. Motocross scares me to death. My husband's a motocross racer. He pushes me to go on the motocross track, and I'm like, nope, it's a trail ride. I don't, ruts, hate them. He's like, go for the rut. Nope, nope, that's stuff, bad stuff happens in ruts. I go around them. But yeah, dirt bikes, you know, I've had several offs, several incidences, whatever you want to call them, bunch of bruises. AJ, I want to invite you. We have the Ruts part of Ruts to Race Lines is the all women's dirt bike class taught by my husband. It's just women. Come on out and enjoy being on dirt bikes. We have little 100 cc's, 125s. So, hey, when you crash, no big deal. Just pick them up, you know, just come out and enjoy it with a bunch of women.
So you guys,
but yeah, that's it. I haven't had, yeah, we have rentals. Yep.
Sweet.
All right, awesome. A couple of things. I want to give a shout out to the attendees, and if in the chat screen, can anyone let us know if you also were a horseback rider before riding motorcycles? Like, I'm always stoked when I hear that. Like, I swear to God, like 80% of us started out on a horse and ended up on motorcycles. So we're gonna do an unofficial poll in that chat screen. Pipe up if you've been a horseback rider before. MK shaking her head. All right, that's your next transformative riding opportunity, MK.
No.
Get on one horsepower. It's only one horsepower. You'll be fine.
I'm an animal control officer. That's how I make. That's my regular job. And so I deal with horses, and they're like, oh, they're big dogs.
No,
nope, they're not.
They're big cats. They're big cats. I actually
yes, they are.
I went to vet school to be a horse vet. No, I ended up in chickens. No.
High five, Margie. High five for that. Right? Nope.
Awesome. All right. I'll move on to our next question then. Is there a riding style you were really resistant to doing, but once you did it, you now love it? And if Margie, if you could kick that off for us.
I think probably touring. Because I just, usually if I'd go out for a ride, I was good for about an hour and then I was bored and ready to go home. And I'm like, I have no idea how people do this. And then I went on a trip with friends and it was a lot more fun, but it was the camaraderie that was fun. And then I decided to take a real road trip and I did it with 2 girlfriends and I started to discover it. And so you guys know Wendy Crocker will be on later today, and I'm just fascinated. How on earth do you do that for hours in your own head, you know, without stopping? And I've heard her speak, but that to me was the biggest challenge for those of us that live up here.
The only thing I've been resistive to in the idea of riding is cruisers. I get that they're comfortable, but the type of riding, you know, just slamming it down the road just holds no appeal to me. Pretty much every other style of riding that I can think of off the top of my head, there's some level of it I would find appealing. So, and I've never gotten a cruiser. I've ridden one. It was comfortable. I'll give it that.
I have to agree with AJ once again. I've never been attracted to cruiser style. First of all, I wouldn't know how to turn it. I wouldn't know where to put my feet. I'm a sport bike rider. I like a more aggressive style. I feel more comfortable that way. I wouldn't know what to do with it, and just being on it for hours at a time. I mean, I took a couple of years ago, myself and a couple buddies went out west and we did 10 days on dual sport bikes, but majority of that time was off-road. I mean, we did several hundred miles on the road. You know, I had a DRZ 400 that I threw some dirt tires on and had a blast. But again, it was mostly off-road, and the scenery kind of made you forget about the fact that you're on the road for hours and hundreds of miles when we did have to actually be on the road. So I've just never been really interested in hundreds and hundreds of miles and hours on a cruiser, just going on the road. I just haven't.
All right, cool. This is actually a really good segue into a question that's kind of drives what I call my ride all the bikes mantra that I'm really vocal about on my social media and with people that I meet. And it's especially working in the industry as well. So, you know, to come from sport bikes and go work for some dirt bike companies, it's like, oh, Jen the Power Ranger's here. And, you know, like all these and I'm like, what the, like, why are they like making so much fun of me? And some of it's good natured, but honestly, some of it isn't. There's a lot of groups of riders out there who they get clammed up and so indoctrinated into their one riding discipline that they're just kind of mean to everyone else. And I don't know if it's an insecurity thing or what it is. And I do want to say, like, I've probably been there at some point in my life. Like, so I grew up in a household of Harley riders. My mom worked for Harley Davidson for a number of years. My dad has been riding Harleys forever. And I mean, we have Harley Davidson everything at my house. Mugs, plates, bikes, jackets, my piggy bank, like my little piggy bank I'd save money in as a kid was like a little Harley Davidson orange and black piggy. So like, I grew up a long time thinking Harleys were the only way, and that's definitely what I was gonna do. And funny enough, I started Margie on a Honda Rebel 250 as well, because my parents like, oh, this is like a little baby Harley. And then once she learns how to ride, she's gonna graduate to a real Harley, and then we'll be a Harley family. And I went to college and met a bunch of sport bike people. And then I was like, awesome, like, oh my God, like, this is what the cool kids do, and look how cool it is, and so fast and nice. And like, I ended up buying a sport bike, and my parents were like, what just happened? Like, how is Jen on a sport bike? Like, oh my God. And they finally came over and accepted me again and didn't disown me. But the point is, for the longest time, I was like, Harley's the only real bike. It's American bikes, the best bikes, blah, blah, blah. And I met my friends at college who are like, nah, like, sport bikes are cool. Like, this is racing. Have you heard of Nikki Hayden? Like, check this out. And I gradually fell in love with it and realized the error of my ways, of being, it's just this one thing all the time. And honestly, I fell into the trap again. So once I started road racing sport bikes, I was like, man, we're so awesome. Look what we do. Like, we're so fast and we do these hard things that other people can't do. Like, oh, go us, like, we're tough or cool. And I met a bunch of dirt bike people kind of like having all that bravado, right? And I got on a dirt bike and they're like, oh yeah, look at Jen, she's an expert rider. Sorry, I lost my headphones and all my acting. But then the point is, like, I suddenly realized, I'm like, man, dirt bikes are like really hard. And like, I just have so much more respect for what they do and what I see in supercross and motocross and on this journey through all the different brands I worked with and all the different riding I've been doing. I'm like, why am I being so judgmental? And so for like the past couple of years, I've just been so passionate about, telling everyone, like, try all the bikes. And so the real question's coming for you guys right here is, I'm all about, let's try and ride all the bikes. Sometimes some of the bikes just don't resonate with you. And sometimes you have your absolute favorite. So I'm gonna ask each of the panelists here, like, let us know, you've tried all these different bikes. If you were only allowed one bike left in your garage and one type of riding, which one are you gonna choose? And Margie, you're up.
I can't. I mean, I can't. Can you see this behind me? I can't. Oh my, okay. All right, so if I had to choose, it'd probably be a dual sport. And that way I could slap different tires on it. And so, you know, I put race tires on it and take it to the track. It might not be pretty, and then I can run dirt roads and I can commute. And I would probably tour on it too. But yeah, wow. I don't even like that question.
I mean, well, for me, it's obvious. I would still stick with the sport bike. My ZX-10 was pretty much my dream bike for that's why I wanted to race. I had one on the street, and Gen 1. I wanted the Gen 5 to race, got one. I have two of them, and I have a 78 CB 750 in my garage. That's actually all I have in my garage at the moment. So that's pretty much what I would stick with at this point in my life anyways. That is subject to change down the road.
I too have several bikes. If I told you how many, you guys will probably want to commit me. So I won't, but my favorite would be dual sport. I'm with you, Margie. And I have, in my garage, I have a DRZ 400 Supermoto, and I put dirt tires on her and I take her anywhere. And that's the one bike that I won't get rid of. My husband, you know, I got a TE 250i, Jen, recently, getting used to the two-stroke. And her and I are bonding. Like, I came off a WR 250, which is a 4-stroke, which was my dual sport bike, and went to the 250 Husky, and it's a challenge. We're still bonding. But again, I go back to my Suzuki, my DRZ. I do have a little monkey. I have a Honda Monkey. It's a 125cc, and that is my favorite bike right now. I take that thing everywhere, but it's not realistic to, you know, to have it as my only bike, because it's only 125cc. Even though I could do highway miles on it and I could take it anywhere, it is a little bike. It's a you know, it's a fun pit bike. So my DRZ would be the one bike I would keep, and she's not going anywhere.
Awesome. I know that was a really unfair question. I'm not even gonna bother to answer it. I'm gonna just skip over that because I can't answer it either. I had a question written down specifically for AJ, but I'm pretty sure all of us here have a similar experience. So we'll run through the panelists again, but specific to AJ, you made the transition from street riding, street sport riding into track riding and racing. And I wanted to know, like, how did that affect your kind of attitude towards street riding? Did you leave it behind completely for a little bit and come back? Do you still own a street bike and do a lot of street riding in general? It's just really interesting because in my experience, I've noticed a lot of road racers, once they've made the transition, they leave it all behind and they're kind of done with the street. So tell us about yourself. Do you still participate in the street sport riding? And if so, why? And how you balance that with the road racing?
Sure. So I continued street riding pretty much the entire time, with the exception of I wasn't doing much of it last year in Texas, but that had more to do with the fact that I was in Texas. There's riding there sucks. There is no street riding, at least not up where I was, up in the Dallas area. Since I've moved, I've been here for, well, this will be my third Saturday. Thus far, every weekend I've gone out on a ride, on the street, obviously, since all the tracks are closed. For me, I went through originally some of the same stages I see a lot of straight to track riders go through, where your first track day or two, you're like, oh my goodness, I suck. I don't know how to ride a motorcycle. And then after a few track days, you start to feel fast and you go through this stage of thinking you are this awesome rider and you know what you're doing on a motorcycle now. And that tends to last, I don't know, that depends on the rider, but you know, 6, 8, 10, 12 track days until you kind of get to that next stage and realize how bad you actually still suck. But that in-between stage for track to street riders, I generally find, and myself was no exception to this, the most dangerous, because you start getting it into your head that you know how to ride a bike fast, that you're quick, and you get out on the street and you're riding it the same way, but you still haven't actually found, or you don't realize where your limits actually are, and you're riding way closer to your limits than you realize. And then on the track, eventually you'll start to exceed your limits, you'll crash, you'll toss your stuff, you start to figure out, okay, this is my limit, this is my bike's ability. It was years before I felt like I was finally getting to the point of maybe starting to outride my bike. And once I kind of crossed into that understanding of where my limits were, I would say how it changed my street riding is I just got a lot calmer. Overall pace was probably similar, but my skill level was so much different, or a change, drastically changed. So how much of my skill level I'm utilizing on the street is way less than it was when I first started doing track days and had those couple track days under my belt. And I find less enjoyment in just jumping on the bike to, say, go to work or run to the store or that sort of thing. I still love street riding, but I want to get out away. I want to get out in the mountains. I want to get out on the twisty roads and go enjoy the scenery and get away from, the city and town, but I still find something very special about riding on the street and about seeing nature and just being out in the areas. California, I rode all over the place and starting to explore out here. And I think there's still something very special about that experience of just being on the road and the people you meet and run into and the things you see and experience, from herds of goats crossing the streets to, some really unique personalities that you might meet, at the local hangouts that you just wouldn't run into on the track.
Awesome. Ditto on that.
I don't think I want to interfere with AJ's imagery there, so I'm not going to say anything.
Well, it took me, like I said previously, when I became a dedicated track rider, I wasn't on the street anymore. And it took me about 6 years to get back on the street. And it wasn't until I was introduced to dual sporting to actually want to go out on the street. But it was a different type of riding. It wasn't riding on the street for hours like you do when you first get a bike. I mean, I was out there till 2 a.m. every night because I just wanted to ride. Like, I just got my license, I just got the bike, I wanted to be out there all the time. But I went from doing 20 to 25 track days a season to doing like 4 or 5. And that includes, 2 of my events every year, because dual sporting is where it's at for me. So yes, I still ride street now. My husband and I ride the monkeys on the street a lot, but it's only, like AJ said, we want to be out in the mountains. We took a 800 miles in 3 days on the monkeys. We were with a group of cruisers, and we had those little 125cc bikes, and we rode them all the way to West Virginia and back. And we had a blast. Like, it was a struggle going up the mountain, but coming down, oh man, we were full on, and we had a blast on those. Exactly. And so yeah, the street riding now is more of a purpose. We use the street to get to the trail when we're dual sporting, and every now and then we'll get on and do a street ride as a group. But I found my love for it again when I lost it for the track, because like AJ said, it's a different type of riding now. When I was doing the track riding, I was able to push and learn on the track. And when I came back on the street, it was just for enjoyment. I wasn't pushing limits anymore. It was just the scenery and to get place to place.
Awesome. Yeah, we need to get an Iron Monkey butt award for MK and her husband for doing that haul. That's awesome. I took a long sabbatical from street riding, and it was actually had an accident on the 405 freeway in California, which is a very busy, scary one. Luckily, I wasn't hurt. But I was also very dedicated to the track at that point too. So I kind of was like, you know what, like, let's just keep it to the track for a while. And I, you know, it was probably 4 or 5 years before I got a street bike again. And like AJ said, it's only for really fun weekend roads now. It's no longer commuting to work or going to the grocery store, but it's still great. And so actually right behind me, I have the Husqvarna 2020 Spark Pullin 701. That's actually made me really excited to street ride again. So sometimes just getting the right bike too will push you back out. I've seen some really interesting comments from our attendees in the chat, and someone just put a note there that's really spurred me to my next question. So they're asking any recommendations for new riders. And also I had a question here specifically about how would you, our panelists, kind of pose to our attendees here if they're like, yes, I'm ready, like I need to try a new discipline. Like, how do I go about doing that? Because as we all know, it could be scary to dive into a whole new mode of riding. And also sometimes it's not the most budget friendly. So for each of you, think about if you were to recommend a rider, like let's say everyone's a street rider, what kind of riding would you recommend next? Is there any type of size bikes or bikes you would recommend they try? If they don't have the budget for a bike, what are some other ideas you have that they could try that type of riding without committing to a motorcycle? Margie, you're up.
Yeah, so I take the philosophy a lot of times when I want to start something new is I'm not putting a lot of money in it until I decide if I like it or not. And I know people who will start a new one, they have to get the best and the, you know, and I don't do that. So the trials bike you see over there, I bought off a trials guy for like $2,100. And whatever it needed to be done to it, I would do it to figure out if I really like it. And if I like it, then I'll buy one that is more suited to what I'm capable of and the style and what I want to do with it. So when I've taught a lot of women how to ride, and I'll tell them your first bike, get something that you love and is comfortable and you can afford, because you're not going to keep it very long is what's going to happen. You'll ride it and then you'll figure out, okay, I think I know what it is that I'm good at and want to do. So buy something that when you sell it, you won't lose any money. And then you can go buy the next one. It's probably one of the reasons why, you know, I've had a lot of bikes because I want to try a lot of different styles, but you don't have to be expensive. If you're going to spend money on something, spend money on gear, and then buy something that you have help with and somebody can help you fix it if it needs it, and then try some things. Don't be afraid to try some things.
So this is something that obviously came up quite a bit when I was teaching the new riders class. And a lot of people would ask, you know, what should I get for my first bike? I don't know, you know, what I want to do. And a lot of riders, they know they want to ride, they know they want to get a bike. So typically I would try to point them towards something appropriate for their size, you know, how they're built, you know, male, female, long legs, short legs, large, small, whatever, something that they could feel comfortable with and manage in those initial, you know, that first summer of riding where you're still figuring out what the clutch and brakes and how it all works together. Unless somebody knew really strongly what they wanted to do, in which case I would try to make a, you know, entry-level bike for that discipline suggestion. If somebody already has a bike and they're riding and they're interested in expanding, almost every riding discipline these days, you can find a course with rental bikes somewhere where you can go try it. Your investment is going to be the class, maybe some gear if, you know, they have some specialized gear that you can't rent, or maybe you're just a weird size. But for the most part, you can try almost anything for, you know, probably under $500. And, you know, go try it for a day. See if you like it. If you do enjoy it, try it again. If you still enjoy it, then start making the investment. But there's really no reason to have to invest a lot just to try something anymore. So, you know, look around. I would imagine that Elisa and the rest of the conference organizers probably have a ton of resources for these courses and places where you can find these different disciplines to try them out.
AJ was spot on. You know, try it before you commit. And every track day organization now, at least here on the East Coast, has, you know, you can rent a bike from them and try the track day. You can rent gear. So there's really no commitment except for your time and a little bit of money to try it. And again, AJ says, you try it once, try it again before you commit. Before you spend the money, try it. Even with dirt bike, there's dirt bike classes that rent dirt bikes as well. You know, there's a lot of people, a lot of women who are interested in dirt biking, but they've never tried it before. They're not sure if they're going to love it. So they want to try before they commit. You know, dirt bike is a lot less expensive than a street bike is. And what I would recommend for people who are street riders, my next recommendation would be try the track. Try it. That's not only the track riding, it teaches you skills that will save your life on the street. It is absolutely a life-saving classes. It's not just out there, you know, full throttle and drag a knee. I mean, yeah, eventually if you get hundreds of track days underneath your belt, you'll be the next Rossi, but it teaches you discipline. It teaches you the limitations of yourself and your bike, and it could save your life on the street. And I can't push that message enough. Track riding, the classes, it will at some point save your life on the streets.
And, you know, I'd like to add too that, you know, I'm the college professor. It never hurts to go take a class from somebody who knows what they're doing. And so AJ's and Marika's advice is spot on. A lot of women that I've taught to ride actually were taught by a boyfriend or a brother that really had no ability to teach. And they were really turned off or afraid because they didn't really understand what the skill set was. A lot of people who are intuitively good at things are not very good at teaching. So that right there, the advice they just gave you was worth the money. That was worth the $20 you spent for the conference right there.
For sure, for sure. And just to kind of add on to what everyone says, even start smaller than that. Research online what you think it is you might like to do next, whether it's dirt bike riding or adventure riding or flat track, you know, whatever it is, hop online. There's lots of useful rider forums, whether it's a Facebook group or actual like website forum, and poke through there and see what kind of bikes the people on that forum like. Trust me, there's going to be very competent riders at all skill levels in those communities, and they'll have really good information and places to start. I'm checking out the chat, and I see PD, one of our attendees, PD is mentioning it's hard for short girls to just go try it theory because sometimes they have a hard time reaching the ground. And that's an excellent point. I'm 5'4", and sometimes things could be hard to touch the ground. But if it's, let's say it's road racing, you can still do a lot of mini series. So there's pocket bikes, there's all different size motorcycles. So you can even just like start small, go to a go-kart track, do a mini moto day. You don't have to go straight to the big track. If you're comfortable riding and on big bikes, then go ahead and go to the big track. But if you have nervousness about putting your feet down and managing balancing techniques, that's one way to get over it. And it's the same with the dirt bikes. Smaller 50cc 65s to 125s, like all those bikes right there, everyone flat foots on great. I've done some new rider training as well with some groups here in SoCal, and there's never been a problem ever with anyone not being able to flat foot and doggy paddle where it needs to be. So if you have the will to try a different riding genre, trust me, there's a bike out that can accommodate your size. Margie, it looks like you had something to say.
Yeah, so can we address that can't flat foot bike myth? Or are you going to do that?
We're going to be in a fight. We're going to have a fight.
Yes, we're going to have a fight, okay? I am long-legged, but most bikes are tall. And I'll be honest, I think I could flat foot the Grom. I have a Grom. Nothing else I have can I flat foot, and that doesn't stop me. And so I think it's been a myth because we've been taught by men that we have to flat foot. And in some cases we do, but a lot of times, I mean, if I can get a foot on the peg and a foot on the ground, that's enough. It's never stopped me. I mean, I've got a big, tall multi-strut over there. I rode a hyper motard on dirt roads. You know, you can't get both feet down on that. I'm not certain, and I'm going to turn off the mic, but I am not certain that that is the skill set that we should be pressing.
Well, devil's avocado here, because I do feel strongly about this. When I was a new rider, I had the Honda Rebel 250, flat-footed on it great. I still have my tip overs and stuff, but learned how to ride pretty good on that. When I graduated to sport bike, it's so much taller, so much scarier. I did lower it by an inch and a half or whatever it was, and I could flat foot and easy and feel good about that when I was street riding. And I think there is a certain window of your riding career, or whatever you want to call it, your riding experience. If you're still a newer rider and you haven't fully learned the balance points and proper controls and everything, it's just too much for your mind to process if you can't just put your feet down and then worry about your controls and stuff. And the day did come, finally, when I raised my sport bike up to its full height and I was ready for it. But I'm worried if I hadn't lowered that bike in those crucial couple of years that I needed it, I think I would have had a lot of embarrassing tip overs and situations. And honestly, I might have just gave up on riding sport bikes if I had those experiences. So I just want to see, I see both sides of it. And now as a rider with as many years as I have, I'm totally comfortable hopping on any size bike. But if this was Jen Dunstan of only 2 years riding, I don't think I would have been ready for it. So that's the other side of it. What's up, MK?
Jen, I'm with you. I am street bike, riding street, it could be tall, I don't have to touch. And I'm a tall chick, I'm like 5, well, I think I'm down to like 5'9" now. I started out at 5'10". But street bike, I don't have to touch. I can tiptoe and I feel confident. The dirt, it is 100% a mentality, a confidence thing. I have to be able to touch. I mean, I ride tall bikes. That 250 two-stroke the Husky is a tall bike. I tiptoe on that, and I don't. On the WR 250, I'm able to flat foot, and I have so much more confidence on that bike because I can flat foot. And again, that comes from having 13 years street and track experience versus only 4 years of dirt riding experience. I'm hoping at one point I'll be with Margie where I don't feel like I need that confidence to be able to flat foot on a dirt bike. But right now I'm there. It is a mental confidence. And if I can't touch flat footed, I'm already going into it a little bit apprehensive. And also I wanted to add that there was another point that I was going to make and I completely forgot. Maybe it'll come back to me.
I swear to God, I thought I was gonna be the first person to do that in this panel. I'm like, I'm gonna space out and just stare at this void of the internet and be like, ugh. So MK, tag, you're it. You got it. So we're down to like the last half hour of the panel. I'm gonna pose one last question and we're gonna open the Q&A because we do have quite a few there. So I'm gonna pose the question. You guys are gonna round robin it while I go through our Q&A and see what I can pull out for this last half hour. So this last question I had written down, I wanted to know, what is the next transformative riding discipline for you guys? Like, what do you see next on your horizon? For me, I think adventure riding is definitely something I want to try next. Husqvarna has the Norden 901 coming out next year, and I'm super excited about it. And I think with all the dual sporting I've done, I feel like finally ready to try a big adventure bike. So that's my next foray. Margie, tell us what you think you want to try next.
I don't know. I feel like I'm running out of things. So the only thing I haven't really done yet that I really, really want to, but I'll be 60 years old this year. And so I'm thinking, how stupid is this? But I don't suppose it's any more stupid than road racing at 50. But I would love to dirt track. I mean, can you imagine anything more exciting than a 100-mile-an-hour spin? I mean, that's awesome. I don't know.
Well, once kind of focused on trying to get this Moto America thing going right now, but I definitely am still actively shopping for a dirt bike. Like I said, just some trail riding. It'll be completely different for me. Not something I've ever remotely done. So right now, those are the next two pretty much for sure steps that I'm working on.
I miss road racing. I would like to get back into that, but just between time commitments and you know, you only have a certain amount of weekends and committed to other things, I'll probably never be able to get back into it. I did try 2 hare scrambles. Well, it was it was an enduro and a sprint enduro last year. And the enduro kicked my ass, I'm not gonna lie. And if it wasn't for the 6 other women that I went with and we encouraged one another to go, it was all of us our first time going, I would have never done it alone. But I would like to probably try another one. And now that I'm a little bit better rider, a little bit more confident, if I had another group of badass women to come with me and encourage me to go, I think I want to try enduro racing again. I did try the sprint enduros, and I really liked that format a lot better than just the enduros. So I'll probably go that route and maybe do an entire series, maybe next year or the year after.
All right, great. So I've been scrolling through our Q&As from our attendees. So we have 16 of them here. I don't know that we're going to get through all of them, but maybe we could try. So each of us, let's try and keep it, you know, like a 1-minute answer or shorter than that. So let's see, what do we have here first? Is there really a difference between dual sport and adventure riding? I always thought they were kind of the same. So real quick about that from my experience is adventure riding is definitely a larger format motorcycle that can consistently do a lot of freeway riding, like high mile-per-hour riding, and then also transition to dirt roads and stuff. Now, when we talk about dual sport, it's a much lighter platform, but also I think, and this might be my own opinion, but I think dual sport bikes are a little more situated for single track, tight technical trail situations. Now, it's not to say you can't get on a dual sport and do massive freeway miles. Like some of them can do that and some people do that. My experience has been kind of doing anything close to 80 mile per hour or doing hundreds of miles on a dual sport. You're gonna work that motor a lot faster and quicker and kind of be done with that bike. Whereas the adventure bike will go longer, and then vice versa. A big, huge, heavy adventure bike on tight, technical single track with a would be a lot harder compared to like a dual sport, which normally resembles a little bit more of a dirt bike. MK, do you have any more input on that one?
Yeah, I agree with you. Adventure riding is something that I've been interested in, but I just been doing it with the dual sport. I've been just so I don't have to invest in another bike, a bigger bike. I just do it with my dual sport. I put a bigger, more comfortable seat on the DRZ, which is, you know, if you don't get a custom seat, it's like riding on a 2x4, and you can't go without a, you know, you can only go a couple hundred miles. You can't go several hundred miles on it. But I agree, like I've done a dual sport rides with a group of people, and they bring these giant bikes into these tight tracks in the dirt trails and stuff. And I'm like, how are you handling this bike? And they have a lot of trouble. They get stuck and they can't go the places a dual sport can. So you kind of have to choose what you want to do. Do you want to go longer on the freeways and not as tight stuff on the trails, or do you want to do more tighter trails and less highway? So you kind of have to pick your poison, because I don't believe that a dual sport or adventure bike isn't great at one thing. It's good at both things. So you have to decide what you want to do. Is going further more important to you, or going into the woods, into tighter trails more important to you?
Awesome. This is a great question. I definitely want to hear from all the panelists on this one. Given all your different experiences, how do you see getting younger females into riding? So what would we suggest for, it sounds like adolescent or younger girls who are going to learn how to ride? AJ, you want to kick that off?
I think a lot of it just has to do with kind of breaking down the stigma. It's a very, and it still is a male-dominated sport, but I think the more women that get on the front line that show that, you know, women can do this and we're not alone in it, I think that will definitely encourage a lot more. You know, I've got some friends who've brought their daughters out to their track, and their daughters are like, oh, now I want to do this. One of my favorite experiences, it was actually just a track day, I think, and I was in the bathroom up at Thunder Hill Raceway in Willows, California, and these two girls were in there like 6 and 10-ish, and was like washing my hands, still had my leathers and everything on. And the little girl grabs her sister's sleeve and she's pulling her. She's like, look, there are girl racers. I told you there were girl racers. And I just was like, we just need to be out there where they can see us and know that we're out there in this. You're not alone.
I mean, AJ hit it right on the head. I think 3 things have happened that's changed everything. One thing I think is dirt bikes and 4-wheelers. And if you go to the dirt bike park, you will see moms there with their daughters, daughters there with their dads. And so this whole thing about women being able to drive themselves and ride themselves has been demystified. Scooters has completely changed everything now because women are used to jumping on a scooter. There's a lot more of those. But I think the third thing is seeing more women out riding. I mean, one of the reasons I don't dye my hair, I take my 60-year-old butt off of a sport bike. And little girls notice that stuff. And I've noticed that a lot more women, when, they may come up and talk to you or not, but it sticks in their head. It's stuck in mind that it's not a strange thing anymore.
I'd say to get the younger generation, younger women started into riding is to take a dirt bike class. They're smaller, they're less intimidating. And when you take an all-women's class, let's say, you'll see other girls doing it. And then just like track days, when you do an all-women's track day, you see other women doing it and you're more, first of all, the camaraderie, the support of those events is the reason I do it. That's the reason I started it. And to see the riderships and the friendship coming from our events it just makes my heart all fuzzy, because that's what it's all about to me. And when women see other women do these things, they're like, well, if she can do it, I can do it. And encourages each other and gives each other the strength and the internal power to want to try those things. And I think the younger generation is the same way. If they see, or 2 friends go together and they go and take a dirt class together, they feel a lot. First of all, they have a lifetime bond because they did that for the first time together, and that's just going to grow and spark something in them, and they're going to encourage their friends to do it. So definitely I would say take a dirt bike class.
Awesome. Great answers by everyone. And yeah, just to follow up on what everyone said is for younger riders and for younger female riders, just start them out on the bikes that make sense for them. Smaller dirt bikes, or if you want to go the road racing route, there's a lot of really great mini series that go to go-kart tracks. So everything's just like a little bit miniature and a little bit safer for them to dip their toe in motorcycling. If you have an even younger one, let's say like toddler up to 5 years old, there's a lot of great stability bike companies out there. And then another plug for my company, Husqvarna, we make an all-electric EE5 mini bike, which can fit a rider from almost like age 3 all the way up to age 7. So you get one bike and all through, it'll last longer than all the pair of pants, that's for sure. So I have a question. This is a 2-for-1. We got 2 questions wrapped into one. And it's specifically for Margie. These attendees like to know more about your trials experience, and so would I. It's such a unique style of riding, and I wouldn't say it's a lot of spotlight on it in the US. So tell us about trials riding, and also a specific part of the question was, tell us more about that trials school that you tried.
So there is actually a trials training center right outside of Chattanooga. And they offer classes regularly. So when we get out of the pandemic a little bit and everything's opened back up, you can take a class there, you can camp, they have cabins, and then there are hotels nearby. It's not very expensive. I think there are a couple of bikes you can rent, but if you know someone or if you ask around, a lot of the trials guys will have more than one bike. And a lot of times they'll have almost a throwaway bike that they'll lend to newbies, because when it really comes down to it, these people are like drug dealers, they're trying to like lure all of these innocents into the sport. It's a really cool sport because it's so technical. Everything is done slowly, and it all has to do with the hoodlum stuff you see kids do anyway is encouraged. So, riding over walls and up boulders and up steep banks in the mud through the creek at 2 miles an hour without busting your butt. But the cool thing about it, I don't know if you could see with this bike back here, is the bikes don't have a seat. So it's all about legs and shoulders and body control. And what I found out from it real quick was I had to learn how to turn the bike with just my body and my weight, which changed really how I turned the bike a lot when I was on the track. It was almost like something came together in my head. So it's a cool sport. Like I said, I haven't competed yet. I have friends trying to lure me into this, and my job just prevents it right now. But the cool thing about it is it's set up at different skill levels. So the beginner level doesn't look very challenging until you get on a bike and try to do it. And then you find out the people who design the courses are diabolical. You know, there'll be a rock right where you have to turn and go around this tree, and you have to understand traction in order to really be able to pull that off and not put your foot down. And so it's cool. I would, if you go online and you look, you'll find there are lots of trials groups that will be near you that you never knew about. And go spectate. They usually don't even charge anything to come spectate.
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks for that, Margie. So there's a couple of questions in here kind of regarding overcoming fear, whether it's for one rider here, they just bought a new, bigger, more powerful bike and they dropped it. And so they kind of have this fear now of getting on this big bike. Also, somebody else has been through injury or incident themselves and they're trying to get back on the bike, and they're, everyone's just got this little nervous anxiousness and fear about coming back and getting into the saddle. So I could actually speak to this real quick myself. I had a pretty gnarly accident just 3 or 4 weeks ago where I crashed on my dual sport and knocked myself out and had to ride it home, and really the most pain I've ever felt on a motorcycle. And a normal, super easy dirt road for me on any other day, I literally had panic attacks. I was crying in my helmet trying to get home a couple weeks ago. And it's been scary to get back on ever since. So what I've done to help myself with this fear is acknowledge it and tell yourself it's okay to feel that way. Because I feel like a lot of us, a lot of women are perfectionists. Don't lie, you know you are. When you feel like you shouldn't have crashed and you're a screw up, and you need to get over that and forgive yourself and rebuild that confidence in yourself. So,
and Jen, that's a fantastic segue into our next presentation, which starts in 8 minutes. So I need to give everybody a break. And if you would like to come and join that panel as well, we'll figure out how to do that. It's not published that you're on it, but we'd love to have you. The 2:30 panel is building confidence after a crash. And so it's a perfect segue. I'm sorry to interrupt. I know our time is so short together, but thank you. Thank you all of your presenters for sharing your stories, sharing your insights and wisdom, and just for making history with us. Thank you so much. Thanks all of you participants watching, and we will see you in 7 minutes for the building confidence after a crash. Bye everyone. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Yeah,
thanks everyone.
Margie. Thanks AJ.
Bye.
Thanks Jen.